let's get into the gutter here. I mean, you can't tell me that somebody's going to fail you after all of those years of work because you like Canadian novels too much?
I think that the committee felt that I was exaggerating the potential of the works I was looking at. And I also think the committee felt that my whole critical stance was questionable. But I don't know that because the committee refused to examine the book.
But I don't understand that, you know. I mean, in this day and age, people are not going to fail somebody because they like Canadian books.
No, I'm not saying that they did not fail me because I liked Canadian books. They failed me because I felt that the Canadian books would last a long time as classics. And they also failed me because they didn't like the way I argued about those books, the way I hung the argument together in my book.
But you know, why? I'm sure the English department at the University of Alberta isn't evil. They must have had a reason.
No, they're not evil. They simply disinclined to participate in a process which they thought had gone astray earlier. They didn't like the appeal that I went through.
You were a troublemaker, and you what? Had gotten outside of the system. You were a glory hound. You were publishing before you'd submitted it to them.
In actual fact, I was publishing and submitting it to them at the same time.
What are you saying? They were jealous?
No. I don't know why. Actually, that's not quite true. When I was publishing, I was moving intellectually in one direction, and my committee was moving intellectually in another. The process actually took about 6 years to get this all together.
And what does that mean? You were moving intellectually in one direction, they were moving intellectually in another direction.
Well, basically, we ended up in two opposed camps on literary criticism. This all sounds very airy-fairy to the general person, but what I was saying is, horror of horrors, or surprise, surprise, there are Canadian classics, and I named 4 novels which I thought were resounding successes. They'll be around 100 years down the road. My committee basically thought that this was A, preposterous, and B, the way I put the whole argument together was untenable.
You're wrapping yourself in the flag?
Well, I happen to be a specialist in Canadian literature. It just so happens that I was looking at Canadian novels, and that's what I was saying.
McGill University, Montreal, where Genevieve Tongue is studying for her Ph.D. She's a scientist and is specializing in parasitology. With research guidelines from her professors, she will probably get her Ph.D. within 4 years. For scientists like her, the system seems to work.
I'm interested in working in the university system. I'm interested in teaching, and I'm interested in doing some research. And without a Ph.D., you cannot do it.
But as former president of the McGill graduate students, she sees problems in fields where the standards are more subjective.
There's a lot of wastage of good people that could have their degree, paper, Ph.D., and do not go through the system. We have to ask why, and we have to find answers to those questions. There are solutions. Maybe the universities are too rigid in some ways and less accepting challenging ideas.
York University in Toronto, where graduate students have been defending their theses in recent weeks. Some failed, some passed, and others were told, revise and resubmit. That's the case for Alan Menzies, a sociologist who's won half a dozen scholarships and a university gold medal. He and his family face another year of debt if he keeps on struggling with his Ph.D. thesis.
What seems to be happening is the university is quelling and squashing innovative, creative minds. And it's much better to write a safe, very safe, non-risky thesis, and you more than likely run into no problems getting it accepted.
Trying to get his thesis accepted by the University of Alberta took more than 7 years out of Wilfred Cude's life. A graduate of Royal Military College, he was a naval officer before taking up literature. In his dispute with the university's English department, he doggedly pursued every legal avenue open to him, finally taking his case to the university's highest court of appeal, the General Faculty's Council.
I won my appeal. It was fair and square. I fought honest for 4 years. I kept all the records. I went before a committee that really, faculty members, they didn't particularly want to hear me. They wished I would go away, but they said, finally, give this guy his exam. They didn't say, give him his degree. They said, give him an exam.
And?
And the faculty in the English department flatly refused to comply.
But surely they can't do that if they're ordered by the university to give you an appeal and you played fair and square on it.
Tenured faculty at a Canadian university or an American university or a British university can do anything they please, as long as it is in the sphere of intellectual endeavor. One of the ironies of academic life is that tenure was created and given to faculty members to defend scholarship, to protect freedom of speech. What it has actually done is created an oligarchy in all our universities. There's no secret to this. Everybody knows that it is an extensive problem. There's absolutely nothing anybody can do. A dean of graduate studies is hostage to the departments. The president is hostage to the departments. You cannot fight tenured professors.
In an organized way is wrong with the system. You think it's unfair, basically. The examination process is unfair.
It's
Why?
unfair because there is no proper, reasonably objective appeal procedures. Presently, you are appealing against the judgment of people who oppose you to judges who are themselves close professional associates of the people you're appealing against. There should be an appeal system for students doing original work outside the university, the specific university, to experts in the field outside.
Maybe go to another university.
Exactly so. That would be perfectly fair, just so long as they are not tenured colleagues of the people that are opposing you in your work. In my case, I would have been very happy if the University of Alberta had taken my dissertation and turned it over to, say, George Woodcock and Northrop Frye and Robertson Davies and had them simply pass it or fail it on a pass-fail basis.
You don't get to judge who your examiners are. We'll take it to a good university.
Okay, all right, I'd even buy that, as long as it were away from the existing campus.
So I took Cude's thesis to my old university in Saskatoon. The thesis has been published as a book called A Due Sense of Differences, and the book was read by Dr. Doug Cherry, former head of the English department at the University of Saskatchewan. In his time, he's passed plenty of Ph.D. students and failed a few as well.
From your reading of Cude's thesis, you read the whole thing, do you think he was hard done by?
Yes, and I think the whole thing could be rather quickly and easily solved if his book, A Due Sense of Differences, were accepted as the equivalent of a Ph.D. thesis.
Would you have passed that thesis at the
Yes.
University of Saskatchewan?
I think if he had presented it here to the English department, it would be accepted as the equivalent of a Ph.D. thesis and superior to a great many.
Wilfred Cude, who might have been Dr. Cude if he's gone to the University of Saskatchewan, works today at a variety of things in the backwoods of Cape Breton. He lectures part-time at a nearby college and raises bees and chickens on 20 acres of land on the shores of the Brador Lake. He and his family built their own house where he spends most of his days writing for a publishing company called Medicine Label Press. It sounds grand, but in reality, Medicine Label Press is Wilf Cude's Visa card, pushed to its credit limit of $4,000. However, the company does have a bestseller on its hands now popping up at campuses all over North America. It's called The Ph.D. Trap. A Toronto publishing company turned it down. Cude says the editor has a Ph.D. But letters pour in today from student groups asking him to speak to them, even at the University of Alberta.
Things have to change. You guys can change it. Why do you think the university wants more graduate students? Ph.D. candidate on the hoof enrolled in this country full-time at any university is worth $10,000 to $12,000 in direct transfer grants, and that's big bread. More you there are, the more money comes into the university to pay for all sorts of things. It doesn't just pay for your education, it pays for libraries and everything else. I'm not saying that's wrong, but that's why the university as a structure wants more of you. Be aware of that. Okay, with all best...
And so Cude sells books and continues his quest for university reform, an end to what he calls the appalling waste of money and bright minds.
In many disciplines, there are no standards. There are no established standards. And that's the thing that practitioners of those disciplines don't care to talk about.
Then maybe we should just pack the whole thing up.
I certainly agree. I think the Ph.D. in the humanities and social sciences is a waste of time intellectually. It's a waste of time as a preparation for university teaching in those disciplines. It furthermore encourages people to think that they're doing things that they're not doing. It's expensive, time-consuming, and stupid.